Welcome to Perspectives with Asima Silva. Today I have another guest on the hot topic that we've been talking about for the past several months regarding the Palestinian crisis and their struggle. Last time I had a guest who was Dr. Brown, and he had contacted me after our show a few weeks later and said, "Hey, are you interested in interviewing someone else on this topic?" And of course I said, of course I do, because this is something that we're all asking questions. We hear different sources, different stories. We're always asking ourselves, who can tell us the story firsthand? And today we have that person with us, and he graciously accepted. We have the former U.S. Special Forces, Alan Shebaro, who's with us today. And he just, from my understanding, Alan, you just came back from the West Bank a few weeks ago. And if you don't mind, if you can take about 20, 30 seconds to just introduce yourself, let our audience know what your background is and who you are.
Sure. Thank you for having me on. My name is Alan Shebaro. I was with 3rd Special Forces Group. I initially volunteered to go to Gaza as providing security for surgeons going in. And I was actually staging out of the West Bank, waiting for that call. Unfortunately, I never got to go, but I spent my time in the West Bank trying to experience everything firsthand, and realized how everything was actually worse than I thought.
Well, first of all, my curiosity is, I know you are a Special Forces, former Special Forces, but why this topic? Why did you get involved in the Palestinian issue? The reason why I'm asking is many Americans out there, feel that it's an issue, but it's far away. It's not something close to home. It's not something they need to worry about. So what motivated you to be not only interested in the topic, but then volunteer to go and actually provide your services?
I think it was an accumulation of different things. For me, it was primarily just doing the right thing. After seeing how everything unfolded with Afghanistan and Iraq, I was hoping for some type of big surprise at the end, some big finale, justifying everything that we were doing, and that never happened. And realizing how that we shouldn't have been there, bottom line, to any locations. And I think it was partially, feeling, deceived in a sense, doing something that we felt were just, at least for myself, definitely felt that it was something at the time, we're doing the right thing, and it just wasn't. And, at least I would have a chance to do the right thing in its time.
Why do you think that you were able to come to that conclusion, and it's not the most common conclusion that other people who might have served in the same position as you have served have come to? Like, what's the difference? Like, do you believe that you're maybe more self-aware, self-conscious, maybe have a better understanding of the world around you? I've always wondered, like, why some people come to this realization and others don't.
I think it was accumulation of different things. For one, just understanding the region and the history of it was a big part of it. And one of the things that drew me to be in Special Forces in the Army for that branch specifically was the motto itself, de oppresso libero, to free the oppressed. And it's something I carried with me even after I got out. It holds a lot of weight personally, and if you actually just take a moment to read the history, not necessarily that. The problem is, I think a lot of people, if they are unaware of the reality of the history, the reality that's going on the ground, people would be a lot more. They would definitely change their views. but right now we have such an overwhelming amount of the media that's pushing for a single narrative. I'm able to at least get people to question, what they're seeing and question what they're being told. So if you don't believe me, hopefully that brings people to go and research it for themselves and try to disprove me, because basically all I do is, go into, quoting people that, have, straight out lied into the media, lay out historical facts. And if you go and research those, trying to disprove it, you'll actually see for yourself that actually is the truth.
Have you gotten pushback? Because I know I was told that you're trying your best after your return from the West Bank, trying your best to educate people and speak up about what you have experienced and seen. Have you received any pushback?
A lot. And I thought that was something that was going to be expected. I was ready for it. And so I really started reading up on a lot of different books, and researching the topic. And I think being on the ground itself gave me a firsthand experience, knowledge of what was going on, and living through it, because it's very difficult to explain, not just what apartheid is, but what it is living in it. And just trying to convey that to the public. And it's difficult because, especially for myself, being part of the occupation in Iraq, I never thought that was me. I always thought I was doing the right thing. And for over a decade, I wanted to believe that. The problem was, it's just the reality of it is, once you actually see through that, you come to the conclusion that it wasn't. If I was in the same, if I was an Iraqi, I would have resisted myself. And if I was a Palestinian, I 100% would be in part of the resistance myself. So if you just take the exact same situation and apply it here in the United States, where a foreign country comes in and applies these laws, where the civilians are, subject to military laws versus the other citizens have civilian laws, then, that in itself. And if people think it's such a great idea, why don't we just do it here? If you are, we'll take a state and, take everybody in it and remove them, and or put them in one state, and then if they are Jewish, they can stay. If they're not, they can get out. And all of a sudden, it doesn't become such a great idea. So I just try to make it as easy as possible to try to comprehend. And it's still, I have reached some people. I know I've received emails and some messages online, social media, that it's, gotten through to some people, but it is difficult, because no matter where you turn, you have this overwhelming amount of mainstream media that is pushing a single narrative, and it's difficult to combat that. So every chance that I get, I try to explain it and what's going on.
So have you found that after your experience, have you been able to receive support from friends or family? Because a lot of people who have these views, who have researched it and come to the conclusion that what's happening in Palestine and to the Palestinians is just absolutely apartheid and possible genocide. So in my opinion, it is genocide, but I'm stating what most people have told me. And they have received, pushback from their own family and friends. So not just the media, not just, local politicians or other people labeling you as maybe anti-Semitic, but just the fact of not even getting support from their family and friends.
I definitely, the people that know me, even when I told them before I left that I was going, what whether they believed in what I was doing or not, they supported me doing it, and they knew what type of person I was. So I always had that close circle of friends that supported me. And then when I came back, I was actually able to change some minds as well, and even strengthen some people's beliefs to make sure, because there were some people that were, you know, unsure, because they felt a certain way, but they were seeing certain things. It's hard to ignore that. It truly is. And I completely understand, but giving them facts, not just historical facts, but actually, day-to-day occurrences that happen, and giving them accounts, personal accounts of what happened to me when I was there. It's difficult to ignore that then, so that's what I'm trying to do. And if I can actually, sit down with people and actually have a conversation with them, it's way easier. But, having something online, which is very difficult to change masses, is difficult. And again, the main thing that I try to do is just, if you don't believe me, look it up for yourself, do your research. If you feel that strongly about it, I'll ask you some questions and just answer me then. And it shouldn't be that difficult. And then once they actually find out about it, that's when minds get changed. That's the approach that I try to take.
So you said you researched before you went, so you sort of knew what to expect. What was different when you got there firsthand? What shocked you? What was it that you didn't expect, that you either experienced or felt or wasn't aware of when you got there?
I didn't. So it was one extreme, one end of the spectrum to the other. I was not expecting the Palestinian people to be as welcoming as they were. It was truly remarkable. I've never heard the word welcome more in my life than I did in the 2 months that I spent in the West Bank from the Palestinians. It was truly remarkable. I had to add 20, 30 minutes to my walk just for random people stopping me and saying, Fadl, welcome, come, sit down, have some coffee, and just sit with them. And the same day, I had, a gun drawn on me from the Israeli soldiers that are there, just for standing there. So it was such an extreme from one end to the other in such a short amount of time. I knew that it was bad. I just didn't realize how bad it was, and experiencing. And I think the worst part is that I experienced a sliver of what they go through, what they've gone through their entire life for generations. I just spent 2 months there, and they're going through this constantly every single day. And it doesn't take much empathy to understand, the struggle that they're going through. It really doesn't. And the worst part was the feeling of helplessness, not being able to do anything when I'm normally in the position where I can do something. And, I've had to, I've realized that this is probably the best way that I can do is help them, is spreading the word and trying to amplify my voice as best I can.
So what would you say is going to, I guess, help the United States come to that, where they understand and see? Because the videos that I've seen kids on TV asking the world, like, where's your humanity? I've seen, I've actually seen a 11, 10-year-old child who came on some, I don't know which channel it was, I had seen it on YouTube, where he's saying that we're treated less than animals. And, where is the world? We're asking you, where are you? So the question I have is, in the United States, as you said, we have special forces with the motto of we stand with the oppressed, right? We defend the oppressed. We are grown up in this country, in schools, believing in our country that we stand for what's right, that we stand for human rights. What would you say that we need to have in this country for us to see the truth? And why are we actually in this position? Because to be honest, seeing all of this and still ignoring it, and having deniers from the media to politicians to laws to going from not just verbal, denial, but also funding the genocide, I'm very worried about how we can get the people of the United States to understand that this is unacceptable.
That's the million-dollar question. I've seen some of my close friends. A lot of the pushback that I've got or that I've received is a lot of it is based on religion, and what I've had to do is kind of connect with them at different levels. So if it's like a religious one, I try to share my experience when I was in Bethlehem, and the different Christians that are the different pastors and priests that I spoke to, and try to share that. The oppression that the Christians actually received there, and try to connect with them on that level. It's very difficult to try to pinpoint one specific way, but I think one of the biggest advantages, or excuse me, one of the biggest steps forward that we've had is the recent ICC that has come out, stating that Israel is an apartheid state. Everything that it's been floating around that was just rumored. Now we actually have the highest court, the ICJ, the highest court, acknowledging that and actually saying that it is an illegal occupation. It has been an illegal occupation since 1967, and it is an apartheid state, and it lists out. But at the same time, I can understand why it's so difficult for people when you've grown up with. Even speaking to my mother. After my experience and sending her some documentaries, she was even raised to believe that this was a land without a people for a people without a land. She didn't know that it was such a rich culture that had such a thriving civilization that was going so well until that time frame. And I hope at least that. At least one person at a time, it can be changed. And I hate to say this, but it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes persistence to make that change.
So one of the other questions I was going to ask, and feel free to tell me if it's too sensitive to share. A lot of people who come back from the West Bank and Gaza, we hear them say words such as yourself, where it was more than they expected. It's more horrible than you would expect, or that that anybody would have fathomed. The question is we speak in such generalities to avoid going into details, because some viewers are sensitive, some people don't want to hear those details, but at the same time, it doesn't give people the understanding of how severe it is. So is there things that you could share with us that could help, not myself included, but also our viewers understand how severe it is, that it's not just a even-sided war where one side has just as much might as the other side, and it's between just only forces and not civilians, is to get the idea of why this is so severe and why people are calling it a genocide.
I only got to experience the West Bank firsthand, which and what's going on in Gaza is 10 times worse. It is drastically worse. And the amount of people, like for example, the raids, I actually got to see that firsthand. I got to see and experience going through the checkpoints, the constant dehumanization. But what's going on in Gaza is literally 10 times, if not much worse. If you just look at the basic facts of it, what they're fighting is basically a militia. They have no type of armor, they have no air force, they have no navy, and a lot of the rockets that they're using are actually unexploded ammunition that is being launched at them by the Israelis. But the problem is it's because we have, from the top down, from our politicians, from our religious leaders, I think that is one of the biggest issues. From Gaza itself, the things that I've seen and the things that I've heard from the people at the West Bank, it absolutely, in my opinion, it absolutely is a genocide, not just by sheer numbers, by but by intent, which is the legal definition of it. If you don't want to accept genocide, you need to accept mass murder. If you don't accept that, then you have to accept ethnic cleansing, because I mean, if you think about just the sheer size of Gaza, 25 by 5, that's walled in. And they said, you know, we're sending leaflets, we're giving them warnings, we're making them phone calls. Where are they going? They have nowhere to go. They're literally being shuffled around, you know, and saying, okay, this area is safe, and then they get bombed there and they have to move again. There's some families that have moved 4 or 5 times, and a lot of it has to do with, and if you just think of it in the psychology of ethnic cleansing, you're trying to get rid of a populace, then that makes perfect sense. You make the living conditions so absolutely horrid that they would want to leave themselves, and it makes the work so much easier for them. But the war itself actually has a lot to do with, and instead of just wiping out at once, well, there's a lot of money to be made right there. And there's other factors like Netanyahu trying to stay in office. There was 38 weeks of protests, you know, from 1st of January 2023 to 1 October 2023. We're talking up to 400,000 Israelis trying to get Netanyahu to step down. These are things that are not publicized. These are things that, you know, every chance that I get, I try to tell people about this. And again, just trying to instigate just a little bit of curiosity to see, like, what I'm saying. If it's absolute nonsense, by all means, prove me wrong. I think that's probably the most frustrating part, is people just having just this one-sided mentality of, you know, oh, this started October 7th. No, this didn't start October 7th. You look back at, even just in the West Bank, you know, the 247, you know, Palestinians that were killed from the 1st of January 2023, the 1st October 2023. The year prior to that, 257. The year prior to that, 314. The year prior to, I mean, this is ongoing. And, you know, now that we actually have, what I don't understand, to be honest with you, is how people can understand this when there's literally high officials in Israel that are attempting to justify rape of detainees. This boggles my mind. I actually just I don't understand at any point in time how sodomizing and torturing human beings to death there's any way to justify that. And in any way, in what alternate universe does that actually make sense to anyone where it's justified in any way? After that, and especially after the ICJ with their, you know, once they announced all that, I just, that was a huge shift forward. But now what I'm seeing is, you know, them trying to justify that is just absurd.
I know we have a few minutes, but I wanted to definitely ask this question. You're part of the military. You're in the Army, or at least we're in the Army. So from what I learned in school after the Vietnam War, we learned in this country that there's such thing as PTSD, that certain violent behavior and trauma will come back and will haunt a person. What I'm always looking at is, if you're creating a state, the Israeli state, where you have IDF soldiers committing such horrible, horrible crimes against, as you mentioned, innocent women, detainees, men, women in prison, children. How can a society be built, especially for the future, on top of when you have such a, and I'm assuming there's a great amount of IDF soldiers who may be doing this, because this has not happened in isolation. It has not been just 1 or 2 incidences. This has been, reports of this happening throughout many years. How can a state in their right mind think that they're creating a foundation of, great citizens that are going to be wonderful going forward in the future? What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious, because you come from that kind of background and you might have more knowledge about the effects of such behaviors.
One of the things that I was very passionate about, and still am, is mental health advocacy for the veterans, for U.S. veterans, and just the sheer numbers of suicides that we've had in the United States. We've had, I think the last number that I saw in March was over 150,000. And there isn't, if you have some type of trauma, if you have like in the depth of trauma that causes you to have, suicidal thoughts, there has to be something that is leading you to that isn't right. It haunts you to that point where it leads you to end your life. I honestly have no idea how they feel that they're going to do that, establish any type of functioning society. But then again, they have people that are kids, literally 18, 19, 20 years old, that are in there doing the fighting. And it's not the politicians, it's not everyone else, it's they're sending those kids out to do it. And I do have empathy for a lot of those soldiers, because you have people that are refusing to serve in the IDF. You have people that are coming out and speaking out against it. You have organizations like Breaking the Silence that are coming out and actually becoming vocal about this. And it's definitely, that holds a lot of weight. I think people actually need to pay attention more to that. How to get people to pay attention more to that, I'm doing what I can, but I mean, that is $1 million question as well. I mean, how do we get people to listen to people who have actually experienced it, and ignore the politicians that are saying, this is justified somehow? I don't. You're right, though. You can't lay a foundation like this because that's going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. The only way that they actually do that is by trying to deceive their population so much to the extent where they justify and say, yes, you're doing the right thing. What you were doing was doing the right thing. But one thing I never had to experience was even, accidentally, without knowledge, killing civilians or, children. And for them to actually find, reasoning to kill children, it disgusts me, to be honest with you.
Well, we're out of time, but I wanted to thank you for your words and your perspective. I wanted to thank you for your service, not only to this country, but also to the people in Palestine. And I hope you please keep this up, because as you said, this is the best we can do, is to educate people and hope that we can change some minds. To wrap up, my perspective on this show, as you know, I think Special Forces Sergeant Alan Shebaro said it beautifully, that our country and the oath that he took is to stand with the oppressed, defend the oppressed. So I hope that our leaders and politicians and our country also do the same and honor that oath. Thank you so much, and I hope you join us again on Perspectives with Asima Silva.